Everyone, my name is Desiree Santa Cruz, and the article I'll be discussing today is Leadership in a Crisis: How to Be a Leader by Bill George. So, the general public leadership theme of the article is how to be a successful leader throughout a crisis or any hardship. And George presents 7 different lessons within this article, which we can shortly go over. So, the first lesson George presents is that leaders must face reality, which starts with the person in charge. Leaders need to look themselves in the mirror and recognize their role in creating the problems. Then they should gather the teams together and gain agreement about the root causes. Leaders can't solve problems if they don't acknowledge they exist from the get go. Lesson number 2 is that no matter how bad things are, they will always get worse. So essentially, if you start off sugarcoating the crisis, um, nothing will be successful from that point on, because if you are to turn that around and expect the worst, anything that comes your way won't seem as bad. Lesson number 3 is build a mountain of cash and get to the highest hill. So this means to make sure you have enough money to back yourself up, because in a crisis, cash is king. And it is vital to ask yourself the question, does your organization have sufficient cash to survive the most dire circumstances? Lesson number 4 is get the world off your shoulders, which in a crisis, many leaders carry the weight of the world on their shoulders and they tend to go into isolation thinking that they can solve this whole situation by themselves, when in reality, leaders must have the help of other people to devise solutions and to implement them. So this means you gotta bring your whole team together and ask for their help and ideas and gain their commitment to painful corrective actions. Lesson number 5 is before asking others to sacrifice, first volunteer yourself. So if there are any sacrifices to be made, and there will be at some point, then whoever is in charge should be the first to step up and make the greatest sacrifices themselves, because everyone is watching what the leader does. So you need to think about what the first step is. Lesson number 6 is to never waste a good crisis. So when things are going well, people resist major changes or try to get by with minor adaptations. And a crisis provides the leader with the platform to get things done that were required anyway and offers a sense of urgency to accelerate their implementation. And the final lesson, lesson number 7, is to be aggressive in the marketplace. So many people look at a crisis as something to get through until they can go back to business as usual. But in reality, the business as usual never returns, because markets are irrevocably changed. So you may want to ask yourself, why not create the changes that move the market in your favor instead of waiting and reacting to the changes as they come? So the example that I wanted to use for this public leadership article was Blockbuster, which I don't know if all of you know or not, but it was a popular movie store in the 90s and 2000s where you could just simply walk in and pick a movie off their select items. But essentially, this store ended up turning into a convenience store because they try to add candy, small throwaway toys, and a variety of other impulse purchase items to help increase their sales. And essentially, they started losing people slowly day by day, because as the internet was rapidly growing, people no longer had to leave the comfort of their home just to find a movie that they wanted to watch. So essentially, the only time people would walk into Blockbuster was because, let's say, you wanted to watch a movie in theaters, but you missed it, so you wanted to go check it out and see if it was on sale in Blockbuster. But either way, as we all know, nowadays Netflix is one of the few leading companies where you can stream movies right off the internet, which, funny enough, Blockbuster turned down a deal with them in the early 2000s. So Blockbuster was closed-minded in what Netflix had offered them, and they even laughed in their face when they mentioned their online ideas, because Netflix wanted to help promote Blockbuster's movie sales by by promoting them online, and then Blockbuster would basically help promote Netflix's name in their stores. But they thought it was a silly idea or whatever, and they decided to reject it. So I think this is an important aspect for a leader, because Blockbuster didn't want to take that extra risk and expanding into the online realm, where essentially they ended up going bankrupt in 2010, and you can see how successful Netflix is now. The national public official involved in the public leadership arena that represents the decisions and actions of the article I was given is Kenneth Fraser. And some background information on him is that he is the chief executive of the pharmaceuticals company called Merck. And essentially, Kenneth served as one of Trump's business advisors on his board. And when the whole incident about the white supremacists versus the whole Black Lives Matters group was occurring, and Trump failed to condemn the actions of the white supremacy, essentially, Kenneth didn't agree with this, and he basically quit being on his council. So the reason I think Kenneth is involved in public leadership is because basically the reason he had to quit Trump's advisory council. So he was not going to stand for this intolerance and extremism because he feels that it is his responsibility to uphold the values of his company. And I'd consider this to be him displaying leadership because not many would take the stand for the company to uphold what they consider to be good morals. So essentially, Kenneth mentions that a lot of companies say they care about certain issues that are going on, but they always fail to speak out against them, which can actually look a lot worse if you say nothing at all. And Kenneth followed lesson number 1 from this article by facing reality because he states that in order to find the source of the issue, one must accept the truth. And he demonstrated this by acknowledging that the root of the problem was the continuation of this extremism and racism, which he decided to be the one to share his voice on the matter and put an end to his participation in Trump's advisory board. So essentially, I agree with all the content in the article I was given. So the way I broke it down was picking the top 3 that I consider to be most vital to a leader. So the first one I picked was lesson number 2. If you are in a leadership position and your team is experiencing a crisis, and the best thing you can do is to expect the worst that can happen. So an example that I kind of put together is, let's say you own a restaurant and the business has been pretty low along with low profits, which you call a team meeting to discuss what steps to take next. You will have to start by telling your staff the worst thing that can happen, which is most likely a result in going bankrupt if you cannot keep up profits. So once you hash out all the negative aspects, you can then begin by discussing new ways that you can increase business, such as changing menu items or new recipes, expanding the hours, or anything else that comes to mind. So if you do not talk about the negativities, then they will just go on and be ignored without any solutions ever being brought up. The second aspect I thought was most important is lesson number 4. A leader should not want to fix an issue by themselves entirely because that will not fix the problem. So basically, taking the same restaurant example I had, the only thing is this time let's change up. The leader decided to deal with the problem by themselves and not include any other employees. So basically, nothing will be resolved this way, and the leader will just end up stressing themselves out and being in isolation. So the best thing that they would want to do is to include everyone because more ideas can be brought to the table along with having confidence in your people to help you out of this crisis. And the final one that I thought was most important is lesson number 5. A leader should always be the first to volunteer themselves first in any situation. So an example I put together is, let's say your team is behind on work and it's causing everyone to become overloaded. As a leader, you should be the first volunteer and spend extra time or do anything necessary to bring up your team. So essentially, everyone looks up to the leader, which they should set themselves up to be the prime example and make sacrifices for the better of their company. So the way that I think this public leadership theme affects my classmates and members of my generation is that the 7 lessons are essential to anyone and can help benefit a variety of situations, such as the first being it can provide a better experience in the classroom because, for example, a student can be struggling without you even knowing, so you can be a leader and volunteer yourself to help them out. And oftentimes, students are afraid of speaking out if they want help because it's looked down upon if you don't know the content. And then the second example is for you as a leader not to take on too much, such as like course load work, anything else that you would consider being too much on your plate, because, like it was said earlier, you can put yourself in isolation and end up not getting anything done. So I guess solutions to that was to improve time management and also seek tutoring for yourself if you're struggling. The public leadership theme of my article affects me personally because I have a lot of younger siblings. So if I am to obtain all of these lessons and learn from them, essentially I will be that good role model and be a leader myself overall. And the way this affects me professionally is that I tend to work with people a lot in my job environment. So being a leader can help me be a better person overall there and help me succeed in my professional life too. So hopefully you guys learned a lot from my presentation today. If not, go over it again. Thank you.